A step-by-step guide of how I turned this old desk into this. She looks so beautiful now. And I'll explain each colour and details. First of all, we're going to really clean it, and I mean deep clean. You're going to remove all the polish, everything that was on there. We need it gone. We need it squeaky clean. And I always like to do an actual squeak test with my finger. If it squeaks, we're good. I use a solution of water and vinegar. Then with a clean rag, I dry it, and I actually allow it to dry with a fan for a few minutes until it's completely dry. And a lot of gunk comes off of this. Next, I'm going to gently sand the entire piece. I'm using 220 grit. It is shiny, and I just want to make sure the primer has something to stick to. I like to do long, even strokes. Next, I hand sand all of the legs, paying particular attention to all the little grooves. We don't want anything left. And after that, we are going to completely clean the entire piece again. And I like to go over it with a tack cloth as well to make sure there is absolutely no dust left at all on the piece. If you don't prep it, your finish is going to chip or flake off. So please, please, please don't skip this step. A small wire brush and a toothbrush are great for getting in those grooves. Now my piece is clean, dry and dust free. I'm going to apply wooden primer, and this is in bleached. So bleached wooden primer. And there is the first coat. As you can see, hasn't covered, but that's okay. I didn't film this, but I did actually fill in all of those grooves on the front there with wood filler. Next, I gently sand. I think I had 600 grit sandpaper, 500 grit sandpaper. And I gently go over, and it's really just a scuff sand to make sure there's no lumps or bumps. And I'm going to use a tack cloth, make sure it's completely dust free. And then I'm going to apply my second coat of wooden primer in bleach. And there's a tack cloth action right there. To apply my wooden primer, I use one of these. You can get them in the dollar store, grocery store, but I find these are great. So get some product, the wooden primer, on the yellow part of your sponge, or you can use a brush, and in long, even strokes, apply your next coat. Do not forget the edges. And once again, go over with a 500 grit sandpaper very, very gently, just to ensure it's completely silky smooth, no bumps. Once again, use a tack cloth and make sure there is absolutely zero dust left. This particular piece actually needed 3 coats of primer. Sometimes I only need 2, but it did need 3. This time I actually used a brush to pull it on. You can use whatever you like. I just did this so I could show you. You could use different tools and techniques to put it on. And I also repeated all of this on the drawer. Exactly the same process. And then I flip it over because now I have to do the underneath. Next, we're going to use the gel stain alternative, and I'm using the colour Pecan. Unfortunately, I did not switch my camera on, but you apply a very small amount of the stain onto a sponge, just like this. And in long, smooth strokes, you just go from left to right, all the way across, the way that you want your grain to go. This dries immediately. You don't have to wipe it off because it's dry immediately. So this is just pecan stain on top of bleached wooden primer. Now I repeat the exact same thing. I'm using pickled oak, but I don't pull it on all over. I pull it on in random places. And then it looks like this. And then I had some barnwood, and I put that just in very small areas, just scrubbing it up and down, or wiping it up and down. I prefer to use 3 different shades and tones because once you start using the graining tool, it really pulls through all those shades from underneath and it looks far more realistic. Next, we're using the wooden stain in pickled oak. This is very different. This contains wood. And with a sponge, a dry sponge, we're gonna dip a small amount in and we're just gonna go down in long strokes, like that. Need a bit more. We want a really thin layer, otherwise you're gonna be left with a bumpy surface. Now using your graining tool, you're gonna kind of go in one long smooth stroke, but kind of tilt the tool up and down. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's some really good videos to explain this. And now I'm going to do the second one. So again, long strokes. And once again, go down with a graining tool. I used a different one that time. And we just keep repeating. And here it is in slow motion. So I'm just tilting the tool back and forth, kind of rolling it back and forth as I'm pulling it straight across. And here's the last one. And the result after using the graining tool. Now we're going back to the gel stain alternative in pecan. So again, using that clean, dry sponge, apply just one very thin coat over. If you want it darker, add another coat. One coat was all I needed for the colour that my client wanted. So here it is. The only thing we have to do now is seal it. I like to use the Retique Triple Teak in satin. This stuff is awesome. I use this particular sponge for putting on my top coat. I didn't use this one, but you can, okay? It really doesn't matter. I just want to show you what I used on this particular occasion, which is this one. So dip your sponge into the Triple Teak. You want to make sure it's wet, but not soaking wet and loaded. And then, in very long, smooth strokes, the same direction as the grain, go up and down. Do not be tempted to go over what you've already done. Let it dry. I do use 2000 grit sandpaper. And I very lightly sand over the Triple Teak. Obviously once it's dry. And then I also make sure I have a tack cloth and make sure there is no dust left. And then I do that process again. I put a second coat on, let it dry, sand, tack cloth, third coat. I do not sand the third coat. And that's what you're left with right here, what you're seeing right now. And it's beautiful. I hope that helps. I want to show you a difference. On this particular piece, I did not use the 3 undertone alternative stains underneath the wood graining. It's kind of a little boring. Compare that to this one. I know it's hard to see on the video, which has got 3 tones underneath the grain. So we've got a very light, we've got the darker shade and the darker one again. In my opinion, it looks more like wood and it's more natural. Got the bleach, the slightly darker. It just looks more real. So either one will work, you choose.